Hello. So here we are again. Another great scripture walking reflection. That's right. Part of the pedestrian adventure series. So scripture tells us that in the morning, that's when we want to sow our seed. And then in the evening, not to let our hands be idle, because we don't know which one's going to do well, this or that or both. Now, when we reflect on this, just want to tell you, this is really great wisdom. If you're looking at moving beyond becoming an employee somewhere and getting into working for yourself, which really would be working for the market, likely working for your customer, what you may find is that sometimes some things do really well, other times not so well. Just to give an example here, if you were a farmer in the ancient world, you get into the situation where if you don't have a crop that produces, then you don't have much going for you. If that's all you invested your labors into. But if in the morning you sowed your seed for a crop, and in the evening you developed tables or chairs or did some other great thing, then if the crop fails, you got the tables and chairs. And if the tables and chairs don't sell too well that year, you got the crop. And in the ancient world, you could store grain and you can store tables and chairs so that you could get into the situation where even if one year your tables didn't sell, you sell the grain, maybe next year sell the tables. If one year you had a situation where the opposite was true, you could do it the opposite way. And so you may not be at a loss overall because you're not in a situation where you're having to sell your toils for a loss, because you're always able to hopefully keep them over the long run until those items become valuable. Now, when I look at this and I think about it, having completed both a master's degree of divinity and a master's degree of business administration, one of the things I see here is that with my master's degree of business administration, I get into the situation where I can clearly see that businesses, especially big businesses, they can very easily have a number of different things that they make money on. And what happens there is that sometimes some of the things don't make much money, and sometimes some of the things make a lot of money. This is the case with companies that have a very diverse, what's called product offering, especially that you can find that what happens there is that the things that do make the money, they can have a way of bailing out the things that don't make the money. But what we want to avoid there with like a business, for example, is getting into a situation where the firm is only feeding those things that don't make money and that they'll never make money. We don't want to have a situation like that if we can help it. It's one thing if it's like a concern for the employees or doing what's right. It's another thing if that's just how the business is designed and money's being wasted when it doesn't need to be. I'm not saying that your master should be money, certainly not. But I'm just looking at this in a greater context here, and so I'm thinking about it first of all in the context that we're in today with businesses and how things are done today. Now, one of the things we can get into here is if we're looking at it in terms of careers. I mean, let's say you're going to school and you're hoping to become maybe a statistician. Now, statisticians usually that always had a good history of having substantial incomes. When a person becomes an actuary, maybe works for an insurance company, and is able to do like risk analysis calculations or something like that, where they're able to do some pretty hard math. Now, what happens, let's say, if you start to study in that kind of career field, and then for whatever reason, the projected number that were considered to be needed was far less than the amount that the schools were producing of graduates. So you got maybe 2 graduates from math degree programs for every job that's available. Well, often what happens is the employers find that maybe they can pay half as much. And so or if that even. And so that's what often happens is things like that occur. And that's where, believe it or not, if you were going to school and you had that as a focus for your life, and you went to school to become a statistician, but maybe at night you were studying a commercial driver's license manual from your state. So you're studying to get your CDL from the state, and then also too, you're studying school for becoming a statistician. Now, I'll tell you what happens here is that you don't become a statistician for whatever reason. If that were to happen, then you'd be able to drive a big truck, perhaps. Especially if you have all the written testing and done. Maybe there's some company training programs, or maybe there's truck driving school or something. You're at least familiar with it, and it's not just a huge stretch. So, I'll tell you, believe it or not, there's a lot of value in these things. The problem we get into here is that sometimes what happens is that there are a lot of things that frankly don't add up to much anyway in terms of like doing well economically. And that's the case with a lot of things that you might find in some schools, that the purpose isn't always to succeed economically. And so, when it's a question of sowing the seed in the morning, and also too, like not letting the hand be idle in the evening, sometimes you really have to consider if your focus is to solely on income, it would really have to consider what possibly could make a decent income. Like, you don't want to sow seed that really is not going to mature into a crop that can sell, or something that may never mature into a crop that you could actually eat even, or something you can't even give to your family and friends. I mean, you can kind of see where I'm going with this. Some things, though, you have, and maybe you have for yourself, and you share with others, and it can make a big difference, and give you nutrients and that sort of thing. There's some good crops out there. Sometimes if you do woodworking, you can make your own cabinets and stuff, and whatever it is you want. And sometimes maybe if you get into some financial distress, it might be possible to sell some of those things. I don't know. Some of that, though, is that you have to look to see what has the most liquidity. Now, liquidity is the idea that you're able to get like a cash value out of it very easily when you go to sell it, whatever it is you might produce, or whatever it is you might keep on hand in terms of equipment and art, or whatever it is that you could possibly part with. So when we look at this sort of in detail, one of the things that we get to here is that there's a lot of wisdom in the scripture. Now, when we look at it in terms of a spiritual matter, one of the things that we can find ourselves coming to the conclusion of is that if we're looking at ministry, for example, like we don't know often what kind of ministry is going to do best. I mean, like, sometimes, for example, we might look at maybe doing ministry and videos, and maybe that might reach some people. Might look at doing a ministry and writing, maybe that might reach some people. But we don't know. And I know that when I was first doing my thing with ministry, and it was before I completed my 93 credit hour Master of Divinity. Like, I think I did some YouTube videos. Maybe that was even after, but I did some YouTube videos, did some writing, and did a few other things. And I didn't know, what was going to really do what needed to be done, whether they're going to be, equally as glorifying to God, or whether they were going to be better one way or another, and I didn't know. Some of that comes down to popularity. I mean, sometimes if you write things and nobody reads them, then you kind of feel like, well, either the people that read these are really getting tremendous spiritual benefit from it, and there are a few people, which is good, or if hardly anybody reads it, maybe it can be time best spent somewhere else. Now, I know this is a simple way of looking at it. I mean, if God is telling you, no, you need to do X, Y, and Z, and X, Y, and Z is not real popular, then don't go out and do A, B, and C if God's telling you need to do X, Y, and Z, So some of this, we have to be a little bit cautious here and do God's will regardless what we do. We don't want to be just like making stuff up and think that we're going to choose what we do. And I'll tell you what, God chooses for us. But there is a point to be made here that if we have some sort of discretion, then we can decide, like what would be best, and we can do what's called diversification, which is what I'm telling you about today. That we can basically put our emphasis on more than one thing. I know that I trained at a brokerage firm one time years ago, become a full-service financial advisor. And I know from that and from classes in finance in college and from my MBA that diversification is pretty key. You generally, most people, I can't really give you any financial advice here, but just to tell you how it is for most people, they find that diversification is very, very beneficial, because, just to give an example here, when you have several different types of stock and maybe one takes a hit, but you got several other types of stock, some of those other types of stock, maybe they do well when one takes a hit. So in the end, you're basically doing maybe well overall. You're doing well overall if the market's doing well overall. And that tends to be how it is. And I'll tell you what, I know for a fact that if I was going to buy stocks and stuff, I certainly would go with diversification. I would go with diversification. I just wouldn't get into just buying one stock. I mean, unless that was maybe a company that I owned or something, and even then, I'd want the company to diversify its investments and not just have one type of investment, if possible. See, because when you have just one type of investment, like, God might send some locusts, and then all that would be devoured, and then you would be out of everything. And it might not be so much that the God might be targeting. I mean, it could be that maybe it's Pharaoh in Egypt, and he just happened to live outside Egypt somewhere, and the locusts come, and well, your crops are kind of failed too. I'm just giving this example. I don't know that people lived outside of Egypt and weren't really so much part of Egypt. I'm sure that people that lived within the area probably were considered Egyptians to some extent. So I'm just kind of giving that as an example. But I'll tell you what, I've gone to school for 20 years, and as you probably know, and as you've heard before, I'm sure, and I really diversified my education. I have education in business, and I have education in computer information systems, and just all sorts of education here. And so when I look at it, yes, it's possible that I can do a variety of things. Sometimes you don't want to have too much diversity in things, because if you do, sometimes you can get in a situation where people might see you so strange. They might think, well, something's not right here, and just the speculation that something's not right might mean that you're not going to maybe get a job working for the people. And so there's a certain level in which, if you're diversifying your education for employment only, that you want to be a little bit careful there and not go too overboard. I know that dual degrees can be kind of nice. I mean, you can even specialize that way. And I know that there's always a lot more to the story. When I look at it, having gone to school for as long as I have, I know, for example, criminal justice. I mean, you get a degree in criminal justice, you get a degree in business administration. That's something that those two can combine, but they don't have to. The same way as if you get a degree in healthcare, you become a licensed nurse practitioner. And then let's say you also get a degree in business administration. Well, you can combine those two things, but you don't have to. So, you combine the two, and you become maybe an amazing nurse that is an administrator. You combine criminal justice with business administration, and maybe you get into a situation where you're able to maybe have some sort of administrative position in police work of some kind. So I mean, there's a lot to think about with this, and one of the things that I like a lot about diversification here is it really gives you a lot of opportunities. So it's something that I've known for many years. I know that a lot of times when you get stuck in one place, it tends to be the case that you can always put your emphasis in another, and sometimes you get to the point where you can only go so far, and then maybe the ladder there, as it were, people change the rungs on the ladder. Maybe they cut down the ladder at the base, or maybe they change or alter it in some way, and so that your corporate ladder isn't what you thought it was when you first started. And now you're in a situation where you either have to just stick with it in the system, maybe find a job somewhere else, or maybe get a different career in a different field, especially if you live in a small city area. Now, this is kind of key to think about. Let's say that you did do business, you got a degree in business, and you got a degree in healthcare, and you became like a nurse or something. So you had the two of those things. Now what happens, for example, is if you get into a situation where you're doing your nursing and somebody accuses you of something that's really bad, where you could lose your license or whatever forever. And in that situation, if you got a degree in business, you got something to fall back on. But if you're just a nurse trying to find a job somewhere without a degree in business, then if you can't do nursing, you're just kind of stuck. And so here it's the same principle. And this is where we can see a lot of strategy come out. We see a lot of strategy. Strategy is good. It's good for doing well. Doing well at something. I know that it's good not just for doing well at something, but it's good for becoming safe and secure, and being able to have offspring that's safe and secure, and strategy can help a lot, and contingency planning, the idea that if this and that, if the crop fails, then we sell the tables and chairs. If the market for furniture is bad, then we sell all the crop, contingency planning. And so, anyway, to make a long story short, that's my reflection for today. God bless, God be praised. God love you, keep you safe, always and forever. God bless.